Hello, my name is Christie Lowrance. I'm the coordinator of the Literary Arts segment of the Sandwich Arts Alliance. Poetry is a unique form of literature. When you stop and think about Clement Moore's poem, The Night Before Christmas, which was written in 1823, it has endured on to today, a simple poem, which he wrote primarily to entertain his children. So poems through the ages have had different purposes, and our program today is going to be discussing what is the purpose of a poem. They tell stories, and they have a purpose. Each one is different. So the story that we're going to tell today goes back to actually April, when the Sandwich Arts Alliance became aware of the Sandwich Food Pantry's plight when the pandemic had hit. And to raise money, the writers decided that they would come up with sort of a unique way of helping out. So in exchange for a donation to the food pantry, we offered to write a poem. And the requests came in and the poems came in, and we raised $750 for the food pantry. But what we got in exchange was a beautiful collection of poetry. It was wonderful to see, and we thought this needs to be shared. So the poems were put together in a collection, and that collection is titled Pebbles in the Stream, which is for sale at the Sandwich Arts Alliance. But each poem, you'll notice when you look over the book, has a different flavor to it, a different feel to it. And in many ways, it's not just the difference in the authors of those poems, but it's the purpose of the poem. So we're going to explore that today. And we're going to hear from two of the people who contributed, June and Marie.
Hi, I'm Marie Luck, and I'm an artist in the Sandwich Art Alliance. And thank you for inviting me to share this experience. So my poetry experience began in the spring. I was locked in the house due to coronavirus, and I was wondering, what am I going to do for Mother's Day this year? Not for myself, but for my two daughter-in-laws. You know, being the mother-in-law, you always say and do the wrong thing, and you don't know what you're going to do for them so that they think, try to impress them. So I was looking online and I saw the ad from the Sandwich Art Alliance saying that you could have a poem created just for you or for someone. And I'm thinking, oh, that's great out. That way somebody else is going to say the words and I'll look like a hero. So I quickly signed up and I did the donation to the food bank. And I thought, well, this is going to be great, and then a few days or maybe a week later, I received an email, and the email said that June Barrett was going to be my poet. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. I know June. I don't really know what she writes or how she writes, but I said, so she'll probably call me in a day or so, and we'll try to figure out what we're going to say about these two girls, Well, I never got a call and I never got an email, and thinking, so when are they going to contact me? Maybe they're not going to do the poems, So anyway, a few weeks later, I received the poems just like that. They were there. And I'm thinking to myself before opening them, how did they know what to write? How did she know? Like, this isn't going to be any good. It's going to be, maybe she'll do it over if I tell her really what the girls are like. So, and I was on the total wrong track. Once I opened the poems, tears. And I was like, how did she think of these things? So I have to say, I was very, very impressed. And I'll tell you more about the reaction and the outcome after June reads the poem.
Hi, this is June Bowser Barrett, and I just want to say thanks to Christie and Heather because they have exhibited talents in this series that I never knew they possessed, but they're amazing. Yes, to speak to Marie's point, I agreed to take part in this Poem-athon because I wanted to contribute to the food bank, and not because I am a poet, really, I'm a playwright and a memoir writer, but I have at times in my life gone back to writing poetry, which is stuck in a drawer somewhere. But anyway, I got an email from Christie saying that someone had commissioned 2 poems for 2 daughters-in-law for Mother's Day, but she never told me who the person was. Which, now that I think about it, was kind of good because Marie and I are friends and we've worked on a lot of projects for the Arts Alliance. And I think if I knew who I was writing the poem for, I might be intimidated. Like, what if she doesn't like it? You know, and what if it's not what she wanted? And maybe she'll never speak to me again. So all of that was off the table because I didn't know who these poems were for. But I did have 2 names, Taylor and Jennifer. So I thought, well, what do I know about these women? Well, I know that they have a mother-in-law who loves them, obviously, or wouldn't have taken this route, and that they are probably really wonderful people and mothers, because this is Mother's Day. So not knowing a lot about the 2 women, I used a poetic device that's been used for centuries, and it's called a conceit. And it has nothing to do with being conceited. It's just a Latin term for a concept. And it's an extended metaphor, or where you take the person and compare the person to something else. It's an old literary device. Take Carl Sandburg's Fog. He doesn't write a poem about fog. He talks about the fog coming on little cat feet. So the extended metaphor is a cat for the fog. Or you think about Christ being portrayed as the good shepherd in poems about him leading his flock and feeding his flock. So I used a conceit or an extended metaphor for both of the poems from Marie's daughters-in-law. And the first one I wrote was for Taylor, and I pictured Taylor as a little girl who had a dollhouse. Now, I don't know if Taylor had a dollhouse or not, but most little girls have a dollhouse or something like it in their life. And I portrayed Taylor as kind of a mother in training, as a little girl playing with her dollhouse. So that's how I conceived of Taylor. And then the other one, Jennifer, I conceived of her as being a very caring, nurturing person. So I took Jennifer through stages of her life as a little girl, rescuing a wounded bird, as a teenager, helping somebody whose house had burned, and later on as a mother who exemplified all of these skills that she learned in childhood as an adult in her own home. So that's how these 2 poems came about. They were kind of like an extended comparison of the 2 women to something else. I hope they worked. I don't know. But anyway, Marie and I decided that I would read Taylor's Dollhouse. And this is the dollhouse. I don't know if you can see it. I love the dollhouse. I don't know where Heather found this. Okay, Heather Pennell did the picture of the dollhouse. It's just adorable. But okay, so I'll read the poem called Taylor's Dollhouse. It's really Heather's dollhouse, but it's Taylor's dollhouse. So what do you want for Christmas? Asked Grandpa, now that you're 6. A dollhouse, said Taylor. A big one with windows and rooms I can fix. There it was that snowy morning, part gingerbread, but mostly Victorian. The rooms had wallpaper, chandeliers, sconces, a winding staircase, a library with tiny volumes provided by Grandpa, the historian. It was well loved by Taylor with attention to details, both artful and practical. Some touches of whimsy, like the trampoline and pet pig, were really hysterical. Many long hours she spent crafting masterpieces of miniaturization. From the bed quilts to the curtains, all were Taylor's creation. The family was started with husband and wife, a dog and 2 cats. The chickens, all 6 and a rooster, lived out back in a coop with pink slats. But Taylor was sad. It was not yet complete, for children were needed to make this a home. So she planned, she built, she sewed, and she pleaded for little bodies to love and fill up the rooms and all empty spaces. That dollhouse now lives in Taylor's own home. She's a wonderful mother, just like the one she created those long years ago in her little girl places. The end.
Well, wasn't that interesting? It was such a nice way of saying things about Mother's Day to my daughter-in-laws, because you never think as a mother-in-law of your daughter-in-laws when they were a little girl. You just meet them when they're adults and you just go from there. But I thought that was so touching and so emotional to like recognize that they were children once and now they're a mother, and was just so emotional for me. I just don't know how June ever thought of writing what she wrote. Now I had to decide, which poem do I give to which girl? They're very similar because they both were about children, little girls growing up and, you know, taking care of things as a young girl and growing up to be a mother. So I'm thinking, okay, well, the dollhouse, which one had a dollhouse? So I kind of just brought up that conversation here and there over a week or so with each of the girls. And I said, did you have a dollhouse, Taylor? And she said, I don't know. I think I might have, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, right away, that's a hint. So anyways, I asked Jennifer, and Jennifer says, oh, she says, I had the best dollhouse. My father built it for me and it was Victorian. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I got my answer. So that's how I chose the poems for the girls. So now I have a dilemma because all the way through the poem, it has Jennifer and Taylor. So I called June and I said, June, I love the poems and they're so special, but would you mind if I change the names? And she said, not at all, not at all. She said, just go for it. And I said, okay, I'm going to just change the names and redo it. And then I did, that's what I did. And then I actually decoupaged the poem, printed them, and I put Victorian type pictures around Jennifer's. And Taylor, who is a clinical psychologist who's always worried about everybody and taking care of all kinds of things and has all kinds of animal things around her home, I gave her the other poem, and they both love them, and it couldn't have been a better experience. Don't know how I'm going to top it next year. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christie Lowrance. I'm the Literary Arts Coordinator at the Sandwich Arts Alliance. We're discussing what is the purpose of a poem. The Literary Arts Group has a special reason for exploring this. In the spring, when the pandemic hit, we decided to support the local food pantry by offering to write a poem in exchange for a donation to the food pantry. What we got was a collection of poems from fiction writers, from memoirists, from children's writers, from people who had never written a poem before. Some of us were experienced published poets, but many of us were not. And what we looked at, what we received, was really an amazing collection, which we decided to share with everyone. And we put it together in a book called Pebbles in the Stream. This book is for sale at the Sandwich Arts Alliance. But in in showcasing these poems and furthering to explain what is the purpose of a poem, two people played a very special role, two talented artists, Carolyn Lecomte and Jana. And they're going to talk about their role in presenting these poems and how the poems shaped the art and how the art helped shape the poems. And in addition, one of them wrote several poems for the collection, and one of them commissioned a poem. So you'll have a double benefit in hearing them talk about that as well. Carolyn?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Lecomte, and I'm an artist and writer, member of the Sandwich Arts Alliance. As Christie told you, the beginnings of this book, Pebbles in the Stream, came out of our commitment to help the local food pantry during the time of need and during the beginnings of this pandemic. The poems that were written by the members of the Sandwich Arts Alliance in as requests from general public or friends and neighbors for special poems to honor a person, an event, to be clever or witty or heartfelt. And the collection of the poems in Pebbles in the Stream reflect all the parts of being human and of being in the same realm of history as we are now. The cover, I was very pleased to be able to design. My idea was, once we chose Pebbles in the Stream as the title, was to convey something soothing and elemental, something life-giving. So I wanted water to be part of the whole cover, as the stream is kind of evocative of life. And I found a photograph, and then I just manipulated it on my computer to soften the edges and to give the impression of water running over the pebbles. And I think the best way to describe the effect of the cover that I was after was contained in this quote from Carl Perkins: "If it weren't for the rocks in its bed, the stream would have no song." And I think that covers pretty well the effect I wanted to have, that the pebbles are all of us contributing whatever we contribute to life. And in this book, there are poems which celebrate every part of being human. And I did write a poem. Well, I have two poems in here, but the one I will read is a poem that was commissioned by someone who wanted to remember a friend who had just passed away from Alzheimer's. And the poem was written for the daughter of the deceased person. And it's called For Donna. "You held my hand through the uncertainty of first light, first life. You led me to my dreams and taught me how to reach for the stars. You were a beacon of kindness, a soft place where others could fall. You were always there to pick them up, help them find the treasure that lay within their own souls. All the while, you were the treasure, the hope, the softness that cushioned the harsh edges and the timeless sands of life. I held your hand through the uncertainty of last light, willing my strength to carry us both through and beyond the darkness that was to come. But you are still the beacon of kindness, a shining light that will always guide me and all who knew you. And there is only the light." I didn't know and never met the lovely person that my poem describes, but with the few words that Christie told me about her, the emotions kind of just rose up in me. And when I write poetry, I generally go with my first impulse. And that was what I wanted to capture in this poem. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jana Dillon. I'm a member of the Sandwich Arts Alliance, and together we put together a book called Pebbles in the Stream. It was a project to raise money for the Sandwich Food Pantry, and now it's also raising money for the Sandwich Arts Alliance. My job in this book was to help coordinate all the pictures and find pictures to put in the book to illustrate the poems. But since we weren't illustrating specific poems, I had to go through artwork that people sent me and my own artwork. So I'm going to show you how I chose different pieces of artwork. Most of my artwork that is in the book, I no longer own, but some of them I do, so I'll show you those. First of all, I found pictures that would evoke a mood. For example, Carolyn Lecomte, who we just had on, wrote a poem about mothers, and it was called To Mom, a beautiful, heartfelt poem. She really writes from the heart. She's very much in touch with humanity and emotions. So that poem, we didn't have pictures of mothers or entire gardens and things like that. So what I did was I took one of my paintings of a peony and used it because of the emotion behind it, which shows a sort of beauty and joy that one finds in one's mothers. So sometimes I was just going for the mood rather than the specific imagery. Another poem, which happened to be written by my husband, had a certain joy in it and playfulness and aspiration. So I chose this Cape Cod picture of Sandy Neck Lighthouse. This is a print of it, but I kept the print so that, because the original is gone, is now in this Falmouth Hospital. So here again, I was just choosing the mood. Now, there was also a poem about a couple who were parted because of Alzheimer's. And so I chose this painting, which shows a couple talking. They're at the Sandwich Boardwalk on the overlook. You can see the ocean in the background. So that shows the intimacy of a couple and the beautiful times they had in the past. These two paintings were not in, but I wanted to show you them because they show you how I could have chosen them if I had had them. I just finished them, so that's why they're here now. This painting would have been chosen for a poem that was about nature or about peacefulness or serenity. This poem, if someone had mentioned a fox, a solitude, or the night, I would have chosen this one. Carolyn has a lot of artwork in the book. She does scratchboard and watercolor and other paintings too, pastel, oils. But her pictures were really easy to match with different poems because she has a lot of animal pictures and a lot of scenes of Sandwich. So those were really wonderful to have. I also got photographs, like from Heather Pennell. There are 2 of those in the book, from Christie, one of my poems, one of my photographs, and from Dean Coe and from others. So it was a collective enterprise. And what I was really happy about was it was so easy to work with everyone. Carolyn, I asked about different pictures and where I should put them, and she is just so kind and polite and just cooperative, as you probably could tell from her video. So I am going to show you also the poem that I asked Sidney Fryer, to write for my sister. I chose him because he had a time at the Sandwich Arts Alliance where he was talking about his poetry, and I attended, and I was so impressed. He's one of those people that you could listen to for hours, where you wouldn't really have to do more than ask questions to keep him going. He's like Joseph Campbell in that he's just enthralling. So when I heard him speak and when I heard the depth of emotion in his poetry, I decided to ask for him to write a poem for my sister, Jeannie. And all I gave him from information was that Jeannie is a big reader. She is a poet herself. and she is director of the McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center in Concord, New Hampshire, and that's an astronomical museum, more or less. So he wrote The Promise of Infinitude, which I will read to you right now, and you'll see how beautiful it is. It starts with a quotation from an astrologer friend long since deceased. The stars might urge, but they do not compel, and they do not coerce. And the poem begins, the choir of stars, the suns and moons stand guard throughout the vast and clockwork universe, and over our own earth keep watch and ward, agreeable conceit that we rehearse. The night sky might confound, but not a curse, because without it, none of us are here. The cosmos, our mother and our nurse, confers the gift of limitless frontier, to go beyond the boundaries imposed by love or fear. Might we have erred to postulate this endless world as friend? To reach or state this thought, must we consult with priest or seer? And it is not despair, but hope that sees it without end. By every right and wealth of wonderment, we may conclude the ocean sea of stars makes real the promise of infinitude, by Donald Sidney Fryer. And my sister was so touched by that poem, absolutely thrilled with it. So I want to thank you all for listening. If you would like a copy of this book, you can go to the Sandwich Arts Alliance website and order it online, or you could go to Titcomb's bookstore and get it there. Thank you very much.
This is one of 3 segments of the literary arts taping of the Purpose of a Poem 2020, a series that will continue into the new year. We have given an opportunity for people who consigned a poem in our spring Poem-athon to say what their purpose was, what did they want, and the person who wrote the poem to say what they were looking to achieve in the writing of a poem, and possibly some back and forth between those people. So we've had 12 people who've been involved in these tapings, and we just want to remind everyone that all these poems are in Pebbles in the Stream, which is for sale at the Sandwich Arts Alliance in the center or online, and also at Titcomb's bookstore. The cost is $19.95. We hope you will take an interest in it and buy it. And please look at the literary arts shelves of books. The writers that you have been listening to all have books that are for sale at the Sandwich Arts Alliance. So explore the children's writers and the history writers and the fiction writers, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much. All the best.